going to talk about how I made this and what some of the problems were, and, how this whole process sorted itself out. So, this series starts with the Kojima Productions, and it did occur to me to maybe have an intro for every single episode, but for the sake of time, it only appears in this very first episode, this whole Kojima Productions logo, which I actually think looks pretty nice. It's not bad. Now, this starts off with a quote from Kobayabe's Nawa, and it talks about the rope and the stick, and that, the stick was used for, like, fighting things, and the rope was used for keeping things together.
Was an explosion, a bang which gave
Starts off with a monologue of Norman Reedus over Black,
Once there was an explosion,
and then we're going to get into the opening cutscene,
spinning in space.
which the first time I played this game, I didn't actually know I was going to make a mini-series out of it, but I really felt like with this opening shot, I was in good hands with Kojima, where I was like, wow, like, this looks beautiful. And the way the music kicks in and the song, like, I just thought this is fantastic. I was, like, relieved immediately of, like, oh, Kojima's back, and he's making art again. And yeah, I mean, this is running on a base PlayStation 4, not even a PlayStation 4 Pro, and it's just gorgeous. If you show any grown-up, I like that I don't consider myself a grown-up. If you show any grown-up these still images, like, they think they're photographs from real life, which is unbelievably impressive. So, my goal for making my miniseries was that I knew that years later when I wanted to revisit this game, I might not necessarily want to play it, but I kind of wanted to relive the story. And when I was watching other people's Death Stranding videos, they just didn't look good. There was HUD everywhere, and there were menus everywhere, and, the gameplay wasn't super good, or the camera work wasn't super good, or they put subtitles in, and I just wanted a really clean... I basically wanted, like, the cleanest looking Death Stranding series, available. And now that I've completed this series, and it took me 200 hours to get a 7.5 hour miniseries done, I really sincerely doubt that anyone else is going to be able to get this game looking as good as I got it looking, as far as not having a HUD. Now, you could turn the HUD off in the options in the game, but there's HUD everywhere. Every couple minutes there's HUD. If you get injured, the game will tell you you have blood loss, even though the HUD is gone. When you're fighting BTs, the baby will start panicking and the HUD will come on. Like, there's just constantly HUD. When you move into a new area, it'll tell you the chiral network is deactivated. When your battery's getting low, it'll tell you. Like, it just tells you way too much stuff, even when you turn the HUD off. So, there are shots in this series that I know would have looked better had I been able to actually have the HUD entirely turned off. So I'll discuss that actually in this episode, where I'm like, there'll be camera cuts that I would not have put in. And in later episodes, there's boss fights, and I had to solve such crazy problems to get a boss fight to look clean. But that's part 3. I'll discuss that when I get there. I'm getting too far ahead. But this is basically the opening cutscene, where you see a bunch of birds, and yeah, it's like immediately interesting. I felt like this game had a really nice start to it. I honestly thought the first few hours of this game that most people thought were really boring, I thought they were super interesting. And, but yeah, if you were to watch a playthrough, it would take forever, man. Like, I was looking at someone who had, like, a no commentary playthrough, and it took them like 8 hours to get... It took them 8 hours to get to where I was at in an hour and a half, literally. So I was definitely able to speed things up and, trim the fat, so to speak. Yeah, dude, that shot's cool. So wonderful use of slow motion. Yeah, I don't have a lot to talk about right here because it's just a cutscene. but I will discuss problems I see, continuity errors, because I do have some continuity errors in this episode. This first episode is actually the roughest because I hadn't really worked out a system for how to get rid of the HUD, and I didn't realize the HUD was going to be such a problem. Because I beat the game normally, and then I went back to play it a second time for this series, and that's when I realized, oh my god, when you turn the HUD off, it doesn't actually turn off. So you're going to see a continuity error here, because now my backpack, there's a package on the ground that I picked up. But that's because the game had a bunch of HUD, like pick up the package and press this for that, and so I just basically picked it up and then reset where I was standing, and yeah. So yeah, this was my first episode. I feel like this first part is a little rough. The camera clips into like some rocks and some minor objects because I hadn't really figured things out yet. I do feel like by episode 3, oh my goodness, it's money. Really by episode 2, it's money. So I feel like this first episode was a hard learning curve. Yeah, so see like there's like a little blip with the camera with that rock there where the camera shot forwards and backwards. I would have edited that out had I noticed it at the time. But yeah, I just see nothing but problems in this first episode. Luckily, the first episode has a lot of stuff going on that's rather interesting because it's introducing the world, so, we kind of coast on that. But yeah, there would have been a ton of HUD there that I had to edit around for that walking sequence. So how I would do it is, so you saw me basically start up top and then I walked down to this cave. I probably walked down to this cave no fewer than 3 to 4 times, just to get clean shots because just something would come up and interrupt the shot. Maybe it would be package, maybe it would be telling you how to play the controls. Because even if you turn the HUD off, and this is maddening, even if you turn the HUD off, it'll still give you control tutorials for like the entirety of the game. And when I say the entirety of the game, I mean you could be 20 hours into the game and it'll be telling you how to throw grenades. I don't even have grenades on me at the time, and it's telling me how to throw grenades. And it just ruins shots. Like, I don't remember episode 1 if like the HUD really ruined beautiful shots that I was working on, but I know that there's particular shots in episode 2, 3, and on where like I had these beautiful sweeping shots, and then all of a sudden it's like I had to cut. Like the HUD would force me to cut because I didn't want the HUD. Um, I really didn't want the HUD. I thought if I was gonna make Death Stranding into like a movie or a TV show, it needed to not have a HUD. This is our first real introduction to the BTs, and this is something that is definitely very riveting the first time you play this game. When you first play this game, you're like, what the hell is going on, man? Yeah. Dude, she is beautiful, but her hair does remind me of Hillary Clinton, which, you know, not super into Hillary Clinton's haircut, but her face is beautiful, so that helps. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why her hair looks like. I don't know what the deal with her hair is. I feel like Norman Reedus has better hair than she does. I should call him Sam. So, I guess I should gear up and start talking about what's about to happen after this sequence. So, this cutscene's gonna last a few minutes. And then what happens in the game is that you basically have to run about 1.5 miles to a distribution center. And when the game does that, the song kicks in. And when the song kicks in, it'll tell you, hey, this song was sung by this person, courtesy of that person. And I couldn't have that in my Death Stranding series. So what I basically had to do is I had to run all the way down to the distribution center so that all the tutorials of like, this is how you swim, this is how you maintain your balance. I had to basically like run all the way down to the distribution center so that it would stop telling me how to like walk upstairs and stuff. And then what I had to do is, after getting to the distribution center, I had to hike all the way back up here to this cave and then do it again so that I could get clean footage. So literally, for me to actually get the follow-up sequence, it took like it's one of those things where you wouldn't think that doing like a 2 to 3 minute walking scene would take like, 45 minutes to an hour, but literally that's how long it ends up taking. And the main reason for that was the HUD. Like, if I could have just turned the HUD off, then I could have just filmed it normal, but as I was trying to film it normal, the HUD kept coming up, and so then I had to keep going back. I had to keep backtracking to like redo the shots to not have a HUD. And then when I would get the shots right, I would go a little further, and then the HUD would show back up again, being like, hold L2 and R2. And so then I'd have to go back and reset. And so then I realized, okay, if I just go all the way down to the distribution center and then backtrack all the way back up, it shouldn't give me anything. And that actually worked. So that ends up being how I actually got rid of the HUD for this walking scene. And if you watch anyone else's Death Stranding video, you will notice that there's HUD everywhere when they walk down to the distribution center. I literally have the only video on YouTube that doesn't have a HUD when he walks down to the distribution center. And also, because I'm editing the walking, I can't use the music that's playing in the game when it first plays. So essentially, whenever a song would play in the series, I would have to pretty much stand still and wait for the song to completely play so that I could then film it with clean audio, so that later in the editor I would reinsert the song. Which is the thing about it's such a multi-step complicated process that it makes me kind of have a headache when I think about doing it with The Witcher. Because my wife wants me to basically do this with The Witcher next, and I was like, do you have any idea how annoying that audio is going to be? Because I'm going to have to basically play the game with no musical audio, and I'm going to have to insert it later, and just, it's such a hassle. It's such a hassle dealing with audio editing. But yeah, this cutscene's almost over, and then I'm going to do the walk. But just know that I had to do this walk like multiple times, ditch the HUD. It was not easy. We're going to have another continuity error because I believe I pick up another package. So I think there's a chance. I don't know where the continuity error is, but much like there was a continuity error with the package on its back, there's about to be a second one. Because I'm pretty sure I pick up another package along the way, but I don't show me picking it up.
Headed into town. Watch yourself.
Yeah, I use some of these shots later in episode 5. Well, I should say part 5. The game is broken up into like 14 episodes, but my series only has 10 episodes, so I didn't want to call them episodes because then that would be really confusing. Because if you're searching for episodes in the game and you search my series, it's not going to work, so I ended up calling them parts, so I just was like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. And then I have 10 parts. Most of the 9 out of the 10 parts are basically a half an hour. Some of them go a little longer, some of them go a little shorter, but I was trying to get that half an hour sweet spot. And then the last episode, there was no good place to cut, so that's a 1 hour episode. And then this is where I start inserting the music. I want to say in the real game, the music doesn't come in here, the music comes in much later. But I really like the way it feels when the music starts kicking in at this point. Yeah, okay, so for this shot, just know that I had already walked all the way down to the distribution center, like where this sequence is ending, and then I had to hike all the way back up here. And then that's how I got these shots with, with no HUD. Which, if this footage is choppy, it's not choppy when you watch the real series. But right now I've got this like running on a laptop, and I'm recording the audio in real time, and I think the laptop's kind of struggling to do it. So basically, as I'm watching this, it doesn't look as smooth as I know it looks on YouTube, or as I know it looks when I actually watch it on files. So just know that the quality's better if you watch the actual series without my commentary. So yeah. So basically, if you were really playing the game, the song would have been playing, so like there would have been like this HUD thing on the bottom left corner saying, like it stayed up the entire duration of the song, which is pretty outrageous. That's why I was like, basically if a song ever played in this game, I had to stand perfectly still, let the entire song play out, and then try to get the footage. But then when I was trying to get the footage, the HUD kept popping up being like, oh, this is how you keep balance in the water. And I'd be like, oh my goodness. So I found it was just oh, there is a continuity error because you can see the the backpack now has an extra package. So yeah, this first episode a little rough compared to the other episodes because I hadn't quite worked out. I hadn't realized how much the game was going to fight me, and by episode 2 or 3, I had really kind of nailed how I was going to actually film this thing, you know, and get it to look clean. So I'm okay with this HUD. These credits I'm okay with. I felt like this wasn't as immersion breaking as, say, like hold L2 or hold triangle, so I felt like, yeah, just having the credits of the people that made this game was appropriate. I felt like it was an extension of the opening credits. Also, when you're getting down to the distribution center, you don't have to float down the river the way I did here, but I just felt like, well, it's faster, it looks interesting. I'd like to do a reverse edit of this shot. See how I swivel the camera? If this was episode 2 or 3, I would not have swiveled the camera that way. I would have just done a hard cut. But once again, it's episode 1, still getting the system down. You know, hadn't quite figured it all out yet at this point. But man, I'm really pleased with how episode 2 and on went. You know, I feel like they came out perfectly. Like, I mean, dude. Yeah, I can't wait to get further into this commentary, actually, when we get deeper into the episodes, because I'm like, dude, there's some crazy stuff. Some crazy action scenes, like, yeah, there's boss fights, like I got boss fights with no HUD, which, dude, that was so difficult. I'll discuss that when we get there, but oh my goodness. Yeah, so he's almost at the destination point. But yeah, basically, so this trip I definitely made way more than once, because this would have been minimum my second time doing it, just to get, you know, rid of the HUD tutorials, which is it's so annoying that I already beat this game once, and like you can't turn off the tutorials. This is really obnoxious. Top left has some HUD, because I kind of had no way to get rid of it. It's not like I could Ken Burns filter it, which, by the way, I do use a Ken Burns like filter crop in a boss fight for episode 4, but that was not going to work for this shot because it would have looked too blurry, so I was like, oh, whatever, just keep it. So technically there's a little bit of HUD, but I feel like that's probably the first and only HUD in this episode, actually, is that top left corner when it's like, deliver the package. Success. So this is the corpse disposal team. They're rolling up, gotta get rid of the body. This is where we start learning more of the crazy rules of this world. I feel like, let me think about this for a minute. It takes 2 episodes or 2 parts of this series before I think that people definitely understand the rules. Although maybe even by part 3. Because part 1 just kind of shows you things, it doesn't really explain anything. Part 2, you kind of learn some more mechanics about how the monsters work. And then in part 3, they really spell out how void outs work. Because void outs are like the nuclear bombs that go off when people die. And that's kind of a hard concept in this first episode to understand. So if I could go back and redo this episode, I'd do a slightly cleaner job of those 2 walking sequences. I mean, I feel like they're acceptable, but when I know how much better they look in later episodes, part of me is like, well, if I could redo any of these episodes, it would be episode 1. Because, you know, the camera is a little juddery. That's pretty much it, though. The camera's a little juddery. There's also something later in this episode that I really, like, it didn't occur to me at the time. But I'll talk about that when we get there. It's probably like 10-15 minutes down the road. But I inserted some stuff that wasn't in the game, and I think it worked really well. And then in hindsight, today when I was thinking about it, I was like, you know what I could have done. But whatever, I'll talk about that later. But there's something that I made better than the game had it, and in hindsight, I'm like, now that a month has gone by, I'm like, you know, I could have made it even more better. Which I don't know if that's even more better. I like this guy's name, Igor. So, yeah, plot-wise, this person is a suicide, which is super dangerous, because in this game world, when someone dies, after like a few days, they turn into like a nuclear bomb and blow up.
Count on you?
And it's because the BTs, which are the beach things, they're like the
You just
monsters.
applying for the
The
job
monsters are
outside.
basically antimatter, and because humans are made up of regular matter, when the antimatter and the regular matter converge,
Spot BTs.
it causes a huge explosion.
That's why we came prepared.
Which is explained.
The bridge ready.
You know, I don't know if that ever actually is explained in the game.
Won't be able to
I mean, it's
stay
explained in
long
the
as
game, but I don't know if they explain it as far as antimatter and matter, but that's actually what's going on. I think the game tells you that that's what's going to happen.
makes me feel like shit every time.
And it also tells you that like there's terrorists that like manufacture void outs.
Fact.
So you can rig the system to create nuclear bombs, you know, out of humans. And then it leaves this massive crater, which we'll see at the end of this episode. So there's a rough sound cut here that, yeah, if I could go back and fix, I would fix. I don't remember why I had to do some sort of hard cut here in the car, and I know it was HUD related, but sorry, it's been so long. This would have been like 100 hours of gameplay ago, and this would have been like almost 2 months ago. Because I was working on this at the end of November 2019,
Go anywhere they damn well please.
and I ended up finishing it
Warriors like yourself.
pretty much right before the new year.
Airplanes.
And I worked on this obsessively. This is like all I did in my free time. My wife was very supportive.
Hard to imagine now. As you can see, the Death Stranding poked us full of
Yeah,
holes.
this was a hard thing. Okay, so what was annoying about this shot or this sequence is that I know it sounds crazy, but I'm like even this was a pain to film, and you're like, why would this be a pain to film? So how this sequence works is you're on rails and you have control of a camera that's basically on a tripod. But the problem is that if you keep the camera still for like, I don't know, let's say 20 seconds, the HUD will turn up and it'll be like right thumbstick to move camera. For real. So like, I just had to keep the camera moving, even though I really wouldn't have done it that way. Like, I wouldn't have done it the way. I mean, basically I was forced to keep the camera moving, and on a lot of levels, like, I don't know, like if you wonder why the camera starts jerking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, it's because I'm trying to keep the camera moving.
We're gonna have to cut to the BTs.
And like the first time I filmed this sequence, I didn't realize it was going to do that. So then like once that, hey, hold R1 to whatever, all of a sudden I got to pause the game and reload. Literally, like I have to stop what I'm doing, and the whole sequence is ruined. I got to go back, reload, and then I'm like, okay, keep this camera moving, so that we don't have that like, you know, use the right thumbstick to move the camera. It's like, thanks Kojima. Thanks Kojima. I know how to move a camera. I've been playing the game now for a while. Like, you don't need to tell people use the right thumbstick to move the camera. I think he said that because he thought, oh, people think it's a cutscene and they won't realize they can move the camera because it's in real time. So maybe that's why they put it up there. But I got the HUD turned off in the options, and then I'm still having to fight it. So this is also why I'm pretty positive I have the cleanest looking Death Stranding series on YouTube. Because once again, there's no subtitles, and there's virtually no HUD. Yes, there's technically a little HUD in this episode, but I mean, come on, cut me some slack. And especially if you see what the game looks like on anyone else's Death Stranding videos, like it's just a mess, you know, stuff everywhere.
This BB must be busted or something.
Yeah, that looks beautiful, man. Dude, these graphics are just fantastic. Yeah, the music's pretty good. And yeah, gotta keep moving that camera. Gotta keep moving that camera to avoid the HUD. The HUD is a heads-up display for anyone who's like, why does he keep saying HUD over and over and over again? Heads-up display is like a video game health bar would be a heads-up display. The time limit at the top of a Mario game is the heads-up display. The score in Donkey Kong is the heads-up display. And this game also has a heads-up display, but in order to make it look, you know, as good as it can look, or in order to make it look like a movie or a TV show, you can't have that. You know, you can't have it. So this is a shot of Timefall. It's a beautiful effect. This is kind of where The game hasn't really... Actually, no, the game has explained Timefall at this point. Because, what's her name? Fragile. Fragile basically shows her hand, and it's like an old lady hand. So you kind of learn that and the drop of water that hit Sam's head earlier that turns his hair white. So the game kind of establishes already that like there's something wrong with the rain. But in this world they call it Timefall, they don't just call it rain. And yeah, Sam's got that blood coming off of him. I like that his blood is like sparkly. So that gold stuff, I didn't know this at the time, because the first time I played this game, I'm like, what is that gold on that guy's face? And that gold is chiralium, and the bosses also have it, and you can pick it off the ground. But chiralium, something about chiralium super attracts the BT monsters. And this is kind of a subtle effect, this guy's face turning super old. I think if that guy's hair turned white too, it would be easier to notice. But I feel like it's one of those things where if you look away for a second, you won't notice that that guy just got his face melted and turned really old really fast. Oh, right there. That's good. That's good. His hair's white right there. Yeah, man. That is just tension 101. And especially when you're new to this game and you're still trying to figure out what is going on and what are the rules, like, you know, these invisible monsters and these handprints, you're like, oh my goodness, dude. Why are they handprints? Why is it invisible? Why is it growling? What does it want, you know? And especially at this point where, you know, everyone just keeps hiding from them, but you haven't seen someone get nabbed. In this sequence, you're going to see someone get nabbed. So you'll see what happens when they actually get grabbed by these dudes. Yeah, man, those particle effects look fantastic. I can't believe how good the black, like, later in the game when, like, you get grabbed by BTs and it becomes like a sea of black tar, like, it's so impressive when you're playing the game and to have that happen in real time. By the way, there's a huge giant monster in the background right there that no one notices. There was like a huge, huge monster right there in that shot. And it's so subtle. I didn't even notice that the monster was in that shot until like today. Even though I edited this series, I played this game. And not that one in the background. There was one in the background on the right there, but I mean no, there was like a, I mean when I say a huge one, I mean it was like a 10-story tall monster. And you can see that one in the background that's kind of pulsating, but that's not the one I'm talking about. Yeah. You know why I wanted to make this whole Death Stranding series is that I was like, you know, if you're a film lover but not a gamer, you're really missing out, you know? Because I feel like when I look at Death Stranding, it just reminds me of like, it really reminds me of Alien, but also just, it's so unique, you know? Like, it reminds me of like the best sci-fi horror ever, basically. Like, I feel like, man, this is cool. Like, it can really hang. I mean, the game's not perfect, the story's not perfect, but like this art design and like the rules and like what's going on, it's definitely super interesting. Like, I really like it. I'm like a huge fan of this game. Even though I'm like, it's not necessarily even that good a game, but I'm just, yeah, such a fan of it. I mean, it really is like, it's just fantastic. I like that this guy starts stabbing himself, and later you're gonna see this guy get dropped into the mouth of like a horrible monster, and he's still alive. So you're like, dude, you did not need to stab yourself. Like, you caused yourself a lot of pain that you didn't need to deal with. Yeah, and this is where we get a glimpse of this thing, you know. But like, I promise you, this thing was in the background way earlier. It's just you didn't notice it because it was fast and it was further away, but like this thing was literally earlier in this scene. Okay, So, the real game doesn't have this music. This is music from the trailer. I took the song from the trailer and shoved it into this scene in the game. Now, the trailer to the game was years ago, and it was this scene, and it played this song. And so when I played the real game and it didn't have this song, I was like, let's put the trailer song back into this, and then that'll really help the scene along, because the scene's actually kind of boring and slow, and I feel like, man, dude, the music really helps. Yeah, the music helps. So I'm shocked that the game didn't have this song in it, but the trailer, which was this scene, had this song in it. So that's like a deep cut that only like a hardcore fan would notice. Now, something I was thinking about today is that I was like, the trailer has like a prolonged intro to this scene where you have a camera panning over the beach looking at a bunch of dead crabs. And today I was like, if I could redo this episode, I would put that trailer shot in. I couldn't use the rest of the trailer shot because they changed Norman Reedus's body model, so it wouldn't match. But I was thinking, like, I could take the intro to the trailer where the camera is tracking along the beach looking at a bunch of dead animals. So everything is hindsight. It's all hindsight. But yeah, if I could go back, I would. There are some things in episode 1 that I would redo and change to make it a little better. I'd still keep this song, of course. But I think that's the only thing that I would change about this sequence is that I would literally go back and I would grab that trailer shot before you see Norman Reedus. Just because I don't know, I like that shot. It's like the camera is like 6 inches off the ground, shooting forward, and you see just all these dead crabs. And then eventually the camera meets up with Norman Reedus, and I feel like, well, at that point I would cut back to the actual game, and then it would be seamless. Yeah, so I cut the song out here for this whole Death Stranding title credit intro, whatever you want to call it. I didn't want the song interfering with that like trumpet like wah noise. Alright, and this is where we start getting crazy surreal. What's interesting about this is that I have beat this game twice and spent, hundreds of hours editing and looking at it. I don't know why she's singing London Bridge is falling down. I mean, I guess it's a metaphor for the earth, but it's never, like, explained why it's that song. Because London Bridge is falling down is kind of a rather specific song. It reminds me of, like, school children at a playground or something. It also seems very old school. So I mean, maybe it's a metaphor for the world or her psyche. Who knows? But yeah, this stuff reminds me of like, yeah. I mean, I just feel like Death Stranding to me, it just reminds me of sci-fi horror on par with Alien and Abyss. But then it has like this Salvador Dali surrealism, and so I just feel like, man, dude, it's such a unique cocktail. Such a unique cocktail. What's basically happening here is that Sam has died, and this is what his limbo kind of looks like, and then he gets resurrected. So every time you die in the game, you end up at the bottom of this ocean that like kind of forms around you in real time. And then you shoot back into your body, you look at a baby inside of you, which always weirds people out the first time, and then you get resurrected. And this is the first Mad Mikkelsen flashback, of which there will be at least, I think there's at least one per episode. When I made my Death Stranding series, I had to decide what plot stuff was going to stay and what was going to go, because I was not going to keep everything that the game does inside of my series, which I will get into later, why I made certain choices. But I definitely was like, okay, keep all the Sam stuff in the game, and keep all the stuff with Matt Mikkelsen in the game, and just kind of focus on that. Because the game has quite a few characters with their own stories and plots, and I ended up cutting a lot of the side characters out, and just kind of, because I wanted to keep it focused on, like, Sam, the mission, and because I knew what the ending to the game was, I could plan it out pretty decently. So yeah, that's the crater from that monster eating that dude. It created this huge nuclear, bomb blast crater.
And then came the next explosion.
I think this is the end of the episode. Yeah, this is the end of the episode. All right.
An explosion
Uh,
that was
hopefully I see some of you people for part 2.